What is going on, guys? Robert from Robert's here with a new video for you guys, and I will be continuing the Devil May Cry Fan Hate Retrospective series. And today's party is brought to you by the letter H for hater. Because if you have any criticism about this game, or how you don't like the franchise's new look, then clearly you're just a hater who doesn't like the hair. Well, at least that's what the gaming media will be saying this entire year, because we are now in 2012, where most of the shit show happens. There's a lot that's going to be happening here, so I'm going to go ahead and do a short recap of the last retrospective from 2011, in which case, pretty much, Capcom called their fans sheepish. A Capcom representative pretty much said a few sheepish people will sing a different tune once more information about the game is shared, or, given the context that someone pointed out to me years later, a few embarrassed people will sing a different tune once more information about the game is shared. Either way, it's a bad PR move on a company to try to get people to trust them and the direction that they're about to take a beloved franchise by saying that they're going to be embarrassed that they didn't like it when it first started. And that's what we should talk about, is fans being embarrassed because Capcom and Ninja Theory just really didn't listen to the fans. And when you put your faith in a Capcom and you want to believe in this company, you feel embarrassed when they don't even take the time to listen to your concerns or act as though they have merit, because they have this game that they want to push out and they don't care what you think. And while fans originally, back in 2010, were complaining about aesthetics, like Dante's redesign, or his weapons redesign, or changes with the lore, now fans are complaining about gameplay, such as the standard for Devil May Cry 60 frames per second being halved to 30 frames per second. A first in a series, and this is the new entry that's supposed to be better than the old games. Here's a short timeline for 2011 from the last video, as well as the camps in regards to how people felt about this game. And without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into the Fan Hate Retrospective for 2012. And off of the bat, we gotta go ahead and start talking about death threats. Yes, death threats. I don't know what it is about video games and death threats that just seem to be happening all the time, but pretty much Ninja Theory received death threats for making a new Devil May Cry from Devil May Cry fans, and it is deplorable. Stupid, irrational, whatever you want to call it. I don't condone death threats of any type. And I mean, just because they are making a game that I don't like doesn't mean that I want the developers to die. I think that's really stupid, childish, irrational, and so on and so forth. But nonetheless, they received death threats about it. And I mean, it's really just pathetic on the part of whoever did that, or whoever sends death threats to developers for doing their jobs. And that's just getting us started on 2012, because it's a lot of crap that goes on this year. It's just a shitstorm, to be honest. And chances are, if you've heard about the fan hate, this is probably the year you start hearing about it, or where it became really, I guess, popular to talk about, because that's when the gaming journalists' websites were covering it more. And, you know, Capcom was really trying to make it seem as though Devil May Cry fans were only upset about the hair for the previous 2 years. And luckily, we know that there's a lot of evidence to say otherwise. We got like a screenshot of the controller layout showing that there were 2 evade buttons. People actually played the game. And we're talking about what it had. And, you know, the trailers that were dropping. But luckily, the gaming journalists would have our backs on this. You know, they would be able to have a fair story about the game, showing the pros and the cons. And, you know, the fans' concerns will be put out, right? And this is because the fans actually have some legit grievances at this point. Gosh, I hate reading things verbatim, and I'm glad that's over. However, at this point, you should see that the Devil May Cry fans have more grievances than just the hair. There's a lot of stuff that the fans are not happy about at this point. However, you will see that Capcom and Ninja Theory have been trying to make it seem as though they only care about the hair, when it's obviously more, because you just heard me read off what a fan thought back in 2011. And, you know, you would think that the video game journalists will get it right, because this evidence is out there for them to get, right? You know, like, this information's out there, it's readily available. I know there's a lot of, like, extremists who are, like, screaming, yelling, and cussing about this game or whatever, but there was a lot of level-headed people that just had legitimate criticism and grievances against the game. So, you know, whenever they covered the game, they could cover it fairly, right? You know, do a little bit of the research and see that gamers aren't just trying to be entitled here. They might have a point. Or not, you know. They could just say that the Devil May Cry fan base are they're just moaning and groaning and being whiny, entitled haters. They could do that, which is exactly what they did. I shouldn't have been surprised, but I was, because, you know, I was naive enough to believe that people that write about video games actually play said video games and they get excited for said video games or whatever. And I didn't really think about corruption in video game journalism, because, you know, Gamergate hadn't happened yet. This is 2012. Gamergate happened 2 years from this. However, that's a topic for another video that will be coming, by the way. Let's go ahead and get a trailer ready for you guys that had just came out. And you'll also notice the evolution of DmC Dante's design. And you'll see as the more trailers come out, he's starting to look less and less like Princess Tam Tam on the left here. And this is likely Capcom trying to damage control and be like, hey guys, look, he doesn't look like this guy anymore that you don't like. Please buy our game. Without further ado, grab some popcorn. Let's watch this trailer.
My personal view on the terrorists is that they are disgusting, degrading,
and generally nauseating. The worst of them is Dante. He has a history of physical violence and is a known sexual deviant. The whole world is looking for you. Every camera, on every street corner, every police force in the country and worldwide.
Demon scum. Picked a bad day for a hangover. Missed.
But we will find you. We will destroy you. It's only a matter of time.
Sweet.
Just like your mother.
Poor mother. I don't know my mother, but if you're calling me a son of a bitch, you wouldn't be the first.
This is Bob Barbas of the Raptor News Network. Just doing God's work.
Hey, Bob, put a spin on this.
Well, I have to thank this blogger. Okay. Now that the trailer is over, we will be returning to the article I showed a little bit earlier. And I just have to give a sincere thank you to this video game blogger for telling not only myself, but the other Devil May Cry fans how our complaints are invalid. Because we obviously just let it go. We have nothing to moan about. And you want to know why? Because He goes on to say, seriously people, how much more Devil May Cry do you want it? Everything in the trailer screams, yes sir, this is authentic Devil May Cry. And you know, I have to ask one question. How? How is this authentic Devil May Cry? Normally, you know, people would write out why they think this is authentic Devil May Cry in the article, but he couldn't be bothered to do that because likely if he were to try to write about it, it would expose that he doesn't know what he's talking about because he probably never played Devil May Cry before or heard of it before this trailer came out. And you know, you shouldn't let pesky facts get in the way of a good article, right? I mean, I know for sure that I go to my local gangsters and I walk up and say, yes sir, I'm an authentic gangster right here. Like, you better not mess with me. Okay, I will move on. So, Kotaku says, the new Devil May Cry seems a lot like the old Devil May Cry. And I have a little question about that. How? How does the new Devil May Cry seem like the old Devil May Cry? When we've established that the character's design is completely different, the weapon designs are completely different, the lore is completely different, it's in a parallel world, so it has nothing to do with the original franchise. And, you know, the old games had 60 frames per second, and this game has 30 frames per second. No lock-on. The old games had lock-on. It's a lot of differences here. There are more differences than similarities. So I'm trying to figure out how is this seeming a lot like the old Devil May Cry here. Maybe I'm just not seeing it. And, you know, I don't think I was alone because here are some comments in the comment section of this article. Now, what's that saying that people say? You can't spell ignorant without IGN? Well, yeah, I think they further show that here because they are saying DMC better than the devil you've known. And I think that's a very curious statement here. Especially since he went on to say that it's been long enough since the unveiling of Dante's new look for the detractors to have shouted themselves out. Now, I have a sneaking suspicion that by detractors, they mean the original Devil May Cry fans that aren't happy with what Ninja Theory is doing, and they have like a list of grievances that I conveniently read at the beginning of this video. But you know, what do I know? I'm just some guy on the internet. Speaking of don't know, apparently Ninja Theory didn't know what they were doing because they needed Capcom to give them frame-by-frame guidance on making DmC Devil May Cry. That's right. Capcom hired these people to make DmC Devil May Cry, and they had to sit there and help them. Let's just change the context here. Imagine you go to a restaurant and you place your order to the waiter, and then you had to actually go back in the back and help the cook prepare your meal. If you were to do that, like, why would you need the cook to prepare your food, right? Like, it doesn't seem like they know what they're doing. Well, this is kind of the case with Ninja Theory at this point, because Capcom hired them for some reason, and, you know, if they need frame-by-frame guidance, maybe they should have went with someone else. Maybe, I don't know. That's just me. Speaking of just being me, I must have been alone in thinking that Princess Tam Tam wasn't Devil May Cry's unlikely savior, because, I don't know what he's saving Devil May Cry from exactly, because Devil May Cry 4 is the highest selling Devil May Cry game to date. Like, as of this day, it's still the best selling Devil May Cry game. And it was back then too, so is he saving Capcom from making money, perhaps? Is that where he's a savior from? I don't know. So, we're going to do a little bit of the Q&A here. Question. Much of the argument surely rests on whether Devil May Cry 4 was considered a dead end for the series. Was it? His response. At the time, Inafune-san was at Capcom and suggested an idea that we should hold on to. That if it was a movie released here in the UK or in America, what would that movie look like? That defined the approach we took. Because if you took Devil May Cry the game and literally translated that into a movie, it wouldn't really work. Now, I don't know if you remember, but Now that movie deal back from the previous video is starting to make a little bit of more sense, and why Capcom's deciding to try to make this game the way that they're doing. If you need an example of this, look no further than the Dragon Ball franchise. Dragon Ball, as a manga, anime, video games, etc., are beloved by a lot of people to this day. And when they tried to translate that to film with Dragon Ball Evolution, fans weren't really having it. And you can kind of see why Devil May Cry fans are acting the way that they are. Because essentially, that's what's happening with Devil May Cry at the moment. You have the classic Devil May Cry being made so it can be a film adaptation. And, you know, Capcom has done this before. Look at Resident Evil. They took that game franchise and they've made movies from it. Now, regardless about how you feel about the quality of said movies, they do make money. Somebody goes to go see them. I know I went to go see the first and second one, and I just dropped off after that. I didn't go see any more. But I mean, they continue making them for some reason, right? So obviously they're making money. And I would argue that the movies have had an direct influence on the games, because you'll notice how it slowly but surely went away from survival horror and became more of an action title. Just like, if you look at the movies, they slowly became like action movies. And you know, that's a good explanation why Resident Evil transitioned from its survival horror roots with Resident Evil 1, where you are in a small space and you have limited ammunition, to, you know, Resident Evil 5 and 6, where you have bigger stages, more guns, and it's like an action movie where you're just shooting out and there's big explosions and huge monsters and, you know, a bunch of spectacle. And this is probably why the drastic redesign for Dante happened. Because if you were a movie director and you were trying to make Dante look realistic via the source material, making Dante with the big red coat and the white hair might not translate well to the movie. However, if you just have him with black hair and like a coat you seem like you can find on like Hot Topic or something, it'll seem more realistic and believable. So that's pretty much explains that. Although, you know, when I see Guardians of the Galaxy and I see Star-Lord in his red coat, I just think, wow, what if they made a Devil May Cry movie? But that's just me personally. So pretty much, they were banking that DmC Devil May Cry was going to do well, although the game's not even out yet, well enough to where they could give it the Resident Evil movie treatment. And I think I have ample evidence to suggest that just might have been what Capcom was thinking with this reboot. Rebirth, retelling, parallel world, whatever the hell they want to call it. Question: could some of the animosity come from your strong identity as a studio? Response: we pushed a strong philosophy in the past, which is that stories matter. That can be irksome to a lot of players. Even recently, David Jaffe was proclaiming that stories have no place in games. I think that there is a place for stories in games, and when it works, it elevates the experience. But there is an assumption that if you're going to put stories in games, other parts of the games have to suffer, which I don't think is the case at all. And you know, as much as I don't like Princess Tam Tam here, I actually do agree with them. Stories play a pretty pivotal role in games. I play a lot of fighting games, and if a fighting game has a story, that's just more incentive for me to buy it outside of the combat. And if you've looked at the recent trend of fighting games that have come out this year, you'll see that Guilty Gear Rev 2 has a robust story mode that is like 4.5 hours. You have Injustice 2 that has a really good story mode as well. Tekken 7 story mode was also better than what they've done in the past. I would argue it's good. Some people might disagree. And you'll notice with Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite, what they are trying to showcase is the game's story mode. And that should be an incentive for people to play. So I actually agree with Taneem here. Alright, question. More internet. They won't have a chance of selling 5 million units. Response. Usually the worst creative crimes are made when you're trying to make a game for someone else. Some perceived demographic that, in all likelihood, doesn't actually exist. From my point of view, there's only one way to try to make a successful game, and that's to make the game you want to play. A game that everyone involved is proud of. So from that point of view, I don't care if it sells 1,000 units or 2 million units. I believe the time you spend making something has to be worthwhile. And you know, from an artistic standpoint, as a writer and an artist, I totally agree with Taneem's statement. However, this isn't his game. This isn't a brand new IP that he's creating. This is an established franchise that has been around for 11 years at this point. So, while you're trying to make a game that you would like, you didn't seem like you was a fan of the original Devil May Cry's to begin with. So I don't really see why you would be making a game that you would want to play from a franchise you really didn't have interest in. Alright, more internet. It's never going to win over Bayonetta combat-wise, so why even try? Response. We never set out to beat Bayonetta in combat. We're aiming to make the best Devil May Cry in the series. We want our combat to be better than the rest, because we take pride in our work. We want it to be accessible, to have all the arcane hardcore depths that you've seen in Devil May Cry. To which case, I'm going to have to disagree with his statements, because if he wanted it to be the best Devil May Cry in the series, I think they would have been able to achieve 60 frames per second. They wouldn't have taken out the lock-on button, which reduces how much you can do in combat, but I'll get more into that later in this video. And we're going to go ahead and move on, because, you know, if you express your displeasure with this game and you went to the Devil May Cry forums, your threads, they'd be locked. And I wouldn't be surprised if some bans happen because of not liking this game, especially after more information came out about Devil May Cry fans' grievances about the game. And, you know, there was also a sales expectation drop. Initially, if you looked at the 2010 video, they were talking about selling 5 billion units. And now they dropped DmC Devil May Cry to attempt to sell 2 million units. And there's the article showcasing that there. And speaking of showcasing, let's go ahead and watch this new DmC Devil May Cry trailer.
This is a message from the Order. Demons, we know your game. Your cameras watch us. Your media brainwash us. Your drinks poison us. And your banking system enslaves us. Demons, the game has changed. We have a new weapon. And he's coming for you.
Whoa. You're not coming in. You're not on the list.
I am now.
Your God sent us to destroy!
My name, by the way, is Dante. But you can call me Dante the Demon Killer. Has a nice ring to it, don't you think?
Citizens, face your demons.
Just like your father. Too big for your fucking boots. Me, a god, versus you, a piece of shit.
You're looking for a fight? Here I am.
Whew, was that Devil May Cry? Because I can't really tell anymore. But regardless, that didn't stop DmC Devil May Cry from getting Best Action Game of E3 back in 2012. And, you know, the bottom line that this person said was that Devil May Cry 4 was a disappointment. DmC might be the best thing that happened to the series since. Oh, and it wins Best Action Game because there simply was no game at E3 2012 with that much action in it. Dante is just as much of a badass as he ever was. He's just more believable now. This guy has a point. Devil May Cry 4 was a disappointment, but not for the reason that it seems. It wasn't that Dante was cheesy. It was not because of the story. And believe it or not, it wasn't even because of Nero being the new guy on the block. The reason that Devil May Cry 4 was a disappointment because Devil May Cry 4 is clearly an unfinished game that was rushed out by Capcom. And the evidence for this shows when you play the story mode, which is all you can play in a Devil May Cry game. However, you start off with Nero, new character, new combat mechanic, Devil Bringer, let you grab enemies and bosses, and you go through and you're traveling to this castle, right? So you travel to the castle, and along your way you fight a fire horse thingy, and then you fight an ice frog, and then you fight a snake lady. And then some plot happens and you unlock Dante. And as you play with Dante, you travel back from the castle to go back where you started the game at. And while you play with Dante, you fight a snake lady, and then you fight an ice frog, and then you fight the fire horse thingy. And then you get back to where the game started or whatever, and then you fight another. The plot keeps going, you know, and then you get Nero again, and you get to the last stage, and you're doing this crazy little dice game, like Dungeon Dice Monsters, and then you end up fighting a fire horse thingy, an ice frog, and then a snake lady. Are you noticing something here? They reuse these 3 same bosses multiple times throughout the game, while in previous Devil May Cry games, they had more bosses. So there's where the disappointment is, that Capcom didn't put more time in making more bosses for the player to fight. Otherwise, Dante's appearance, true to the character, his attitude, true to the character, arguably, and the combat, best in the series, hands down. And this is as a Devil May Cry 3 fanboy. The style system switch on the fly with Devil May Cry 4 is way better than the previous system where you have to pick your style before you start it. But more on that later when we get there. And also, when he's talking about Dante being more believable, what he's really saying is that Dante is able to, you know, be translated to the movies now if Capcom so wishes. Therefore more believable because he's more angry, and you know he's fighting an evil corporation with the evil CEO, because that's a believable story, you know. It's very generic, cliche, but believable. It should come as no surprise that Capcom was 100% behind the new DmC Devil May Cry. And there was some hope that the original style will return in the future. And this is because Capcom at this point knows that they were making a mistake. They know it. They just are too proud to admit it and say that the fans were right. Any other company would be like, hey, you know, we listened to you guys' feedback, and we're going to go ahead and start working on Devil May Cry 5, and we're going to just spin this game that we've worked so hard on off and make a new franchise from it. You know, they could have done that, and I think the fans would have just forgiven them. And speaking of Capcom's lies, the people behind DmC Devil May Cry were saying 30 frames per second can feel just as nice as 60 frames per second. And I have one question. How? How can that be? When we know that the more frames per second there are, the more responsive the controls are going to be, and the more fluid the animation is going to be on the character. We know this, so that's just a blatant lie. I mean, come on. And of course, IGN comes to the defense of Emo Dante. And according to IGN, this new Dante is a demon killer not unlike the original, unless of course you go to the Dante checklist that I pulled out of, you know, an art book from the guy that created Dante. And you see that while new Dante does have a long coat, I wouldn't necessarily say he's a witty person, as he's more of an angry person who cusses a lot. And of course he smokes too, so that's like 2 of the tenets of Dante being broken that, you know, the original creator of Dante created. So, you know, kind of not like the original Dante. And of course the article goes on to say some things here that you can pause and read if you want, but you'll notice that they also tried to make this about the hair again. And the reason why these video game bloggers keep trying to make this about the hair is because they want to make it seem as though the original Devil May Cry fans were being irrational and just hating new Dante because of the looks alone, and they didn't want to address any of the gameplay issues that they had or any of the lore issues they had. That way, you know, the original fans could seem childish and like whiny, entitled man-children. And the article goes on to say some more stuff right here that you can pause and read if you so wish. However, I'm going to highlight that IGN claimed with the reboot of Devil May Cry in perfect tune with the original series, and I'm going to have to call a little shenanigans here. The reboot of Devil May Cry is not in tune with the original series, otherwise the original fans wouldn't be so upset. I mean, they didn't like Nero with Devil May Cry 4, but I mean, when they seen new Dante, they started to rethink how they felt about Nero. And, I mean, honestly, when IGN is making statements like, the initial internet rage has no place in a larger reception of Ninja Theory's efforts, I'm starting to think IGN does not know why the fans are still upset. Or if they do, they're just playing ignorant at this point to make Capcom look a little bit better with this product. So they can blame the fans for internet rage and being whiny, entitled man-children, instead of acknowledging that Capcom is mistreating its fan base here, with ignoring them, pushing the product on them that they don't want, etc. And of course, you can see this when you actually go to a comment section and listen to what some of the fans have to say, such as what this guy had to say about why he didn't want to buy the game. And there's tons of comments like that as well. However, whenever you get to these video game bloggers, they always have to insult the Devil May Cry fans, because that's their argument there. That they build a straw man that, hey, they don't like the new game because, you know, Dante doesn't have white hair. They're so stupid, right, guys? That's what they rely on. Such as this. DmC Devil May Cry. Silencing the haters. So good they named it twice. And I have to ask, why you always lying? Silencing the haters? How are you silencing the haters when your gameplay's not looking good? Your character designs arguably aren't looking good, and this game's making the older games look better since they all run at 60 frames per second, and this new game is locked at 30 frames per second. And also, again, why are you making this about the hair? The fans have a list of grievances against this new Devil May Cry game, which I displayed earlier in this video, which was available to the guy writing this article if he were to go look for it. But of course, why go look for it? You can just push a narrative that the fans are being irrational, entitled, whiny man-children who are hating the game because Dante doesn't have white hair. And speaking of white hair, let's go ahead and check out this new Devil May Cry trailer.
The demons are amongst us, Dante. They are enslaving mankind. The world is asleep, brainwashed, and helpless. We're fighting back. I'm with an organization called The Order. Heard of it?
Something to do with that masked freak on the net.
That's my boss.
Wonderful. Can't wait.
Dante, it really is you? My name is Virgil. You don't remember me.
You're my brother.
Your twin brother. I've been looking for you for a long time now. With the two of us working together, I believe that we can defeat them.
So that's what this is about. You need me to fight the demons, help you save the world.
What else were you planning on doing with your life?
You're gonna stick with this to the end, right?
Count it.
Good luck.
That's madness. You would risk the future of mankind for a girl.
Cat put herself through hell to protect us.
We'll do it your way. This is it, Dante. We have to put our lives into each other's hands completely, without hesitation.
We are brothers, after all.
Wow, these trailers the more trailers come out, the more information comes out, the less this looks like a Devil May Cry game. Am I right? But at least Capcom understands why we got mad. And my response to Capcom is, go fund yourself. Capcom, you know exactly why your fan base is not happy with you right now. You have the power to fix it. And I mean, they've been vocal. We're talking about since 2011, when on your very forums, the Capcom forums, or you can get direct input from your fans, you have someone say this. And to be honest, I don't think they are listening to fans or customers anymore. And that's why I hope this game to be the most bad seller in all history. So Capcom and every game makers learn that what we think is important. AKA, your fans are letting you know that what you're presenting to them is not exactly what they want. And they want to support you as a company. They want to buy your product. They just want you to, I don't know, kind of make what they want so they can purchase it and not just push something that they don't want and say, hey, this is Devil May Cry, buy it. But I mean, what the hell do I know, you know? I'm just a guy on the internet, as always. And of course, here you go, more stuff about them saying why they understand that their fans are mad, but they don't plan to do anything about it because they're Capcom. And of course, that's not what the video game bloggers are saying, because according to them, Capcom turned public opinion around. And to them, I have to say, why you always whining? Because Capcom has not turned public opinion around. They just aren't listening to the people that are criticizing this game at this point. They have an echo chamber of people that are just kissing this game's hiney, saying it's the best thing since sliced bread and that the old games weren't really even that good. And of course, it wouldn't be complete without trying to bring up the hair yet again and ignoring every other grievance that the Devil May Cry fans have brought up to this point. Because, you know, if you did that, you would have to actually acknowledge that you're making a mistake and insulting your customers or whatever. And if you were to do that, then the people that are complaining about this game wouldn't just be entitled, whiny man-children who are upset because Dante hair is not white. So yeah, now 2 years later, much of the negativity has been replaced by positivity and genuine excitement for what looks like one of the most interesting games of 2013. And did you really just tell that lie though? Like, for real? Like, for real? I'm sorry. The negativity, quote unquote, as you call it, the criticism of this game is still there. And it's still here to this day in 2017. And the positivity that you're saying, once again, echo chamber. Because if you, I don't know, lock threads that complain about the game and you don't listen to the fan concerns when they try to address it to you directly, then of course it's going to be nothing but positivity. And speaking of positivity, let's check out a new DmC Devil May Cry trailer.
Rated M for mature.
There have always been angels, there have always been demons, and there have always been a war.
Good. I finally have your attention.
Now, the question some of you must be asking yourself is that, why did Capcom choose Ninja Theory to handle the Devil May Cry franchise when they had to give them frame-by-frame guidance in how they're mistreating the Devil May Cry fans, right? And add this to the thing. Apparently, DMC contained sampled human farts for reasons. But at least Capcom decided to draw the line at old women's nipples. Why these would be in a Devil May Cry game is beyond me. Your guess is as good as mine at this point. But you know what you don't have to guess about? Will Virgil be playable or not? Because he's a pre-order exclusive. So pretty much if you want to play as Virgil, you're going to have to pre-order the game. And if you don't pre-order, well, maybe it'll be downloadable later. You know, Capcom loves to do that type of thing where they cut content from your game to sell it to you later. Oh, and here we go with IGN. Another question you have to ask yourself is that, why are these gaming outlets defending this game so much, right? Like, so many articles, especially from IGN. What do they have, like 2 or 3 in this video alone? Alright, so IGN claims this time that DMC Devil May Cry has nothing left to prove. And to IGN, I have to say, why you always lying? You are lying through your teeth. This game has a lot to prove. And the reason for this is because of Ninja Theory's and Capcom's arrogance and boasting about how awesome this game is going to be. Along with the gaming journalist websites hyping this game up to the moon. I mean, it won Best Action Game at E3. Imagine, if you will, you have an individual call you out in a video game or in a sport, and they say that you're trash and that they're better than you and that they're the best. So you say, alright, let's play. And imagine if, as it got closer to you guys actually, I don't know, playing the game, like you're getting your controllers ready, or you go to the field or the basketball court to finally settle it, the person's like, I ain't got nothing left to prove. It's going like, no, you do have something to prove. You've been talking cash money shit. So you need to put up or shut up. And that's exactly what's happening with DMC Devil May Cry right now, as IGN comes to their defense. And also, IGN, I have 2 questions for you this time. One, you made the statement that on this evidence, this new DMC might actually be better than the Devil You Know, the best game in the series since 2008's Devil May Cry 3. So question number 1 is that, did you mean 2008's Devil May Cry 4? Because Devil May Cry 3 actually came out in 2005, and you would know this if you actually, I don't know, did an ounce of research, you know, with the internet, because it's not that hard to find. Or if your editors were to have caught this, but I don't think y'all cared. Y'all had to push out this article. Wouldn't be surprised if Capcom paid you for this little puff piece here. And my second question is, how? How would DMC Devil May Cry potentially be better than the Devil We Know? Based on the gameplay trailers, the combat doesn't look as refined as the previous Devil May Cry games. The story, I mean, if you like where they're going with the story, then it could be better in that aspect, but otherwise, not really seeing it. So, I just want to know how. It might actually be better. Now, IGN goes on to say this, in which case, I'm just going to leave it there and let you pause it if you so wish to read it. And I find it funny that they said that the combat system for DMC Devil May Cry emerges as a system with immense complexity and range. And you'll see more about this a little bit later, so hold on. Just keep that in mind. IGN continues to say some stuff here that you can pause and read if you so wish. However, I have a question for this little statement that IGN made here, in which case they said, Ninja Theory has made some very successful tweaks to the Devil May Cry backstory that cast Dante and Virgil as rather tragic figures. And I want to ask, what did Ninja Theory do that the previous game didn't do? Because they're saying that Ninja Theory made Dante and Virgil sons of a murdered mother and an exiled father and left to fend for themselves in the world of humans. And that sounds eerily familiar to what happened in the original games there with Dante and Virgil, you know. They are born, their mother is killed by demons that Mundus sent, and then they're kind of left without a mom or a dad because Sparta disappeared somewhere, and they're fending for themselves in a world full of humans while being half demon, half human. I think the tweet that you're talking about is that Ninja Theory just made Sparta be exiled from the world of humans or something. Like, is that the big tweak that Ninja Theory made that you're kissing their ass about? Seems a little weird, but whatever. IGN continues on here. You know, pause, read if you want. So what you have to realize with all of this is that Capcom's been insulting anti-DmC Devil May Cry fans for a while now. However, some of the complaints that the fans have are starting to shine through a little bit with Capcom doing Capcom tactics. Because Virgil is not playable in the game at launch unless you pre-order. And if you don't pre-order, then you're going to have to pay for them. And we know how much people love paying full price for something that is incomplete. Luckily, Capcom offers the ability to complete it for some coin. You know, people love that. And they especially loved it back in March when Street Fighter X Tekken had all that on-disc DLC where they had 20 characters on disc, fully rendered. They had their endings and they had their prologue pictures. They just didn't have their voices. Fans were really excited for that. In fact, if you don't know what happened, the Capcom's BBB rating, or the Better Business Bureau rating, went down after this, after people filed a complaint. And IGN continues on. You know, pause, read if you want. I'm just putting it here in case like they try to take it down later or something. Hey, no, looky here. IGN was actually competent for once, and they've noticed something. And this is the problem that Devil May Cry fans have with DmC Devil May Cry. And this is that it's a Devil May Cry game that doesn't look like a Devil May Cry game. And if it doesn't look like a Devil May Cry game, why can't it just be a, I don't know, new IP, brand new title from Capcom, kind of like, I don't know, Devil May Cry was for Resident Evil, you know, history and whatnot. So, let me go ahead and just show some of the recent changes from DmC Devil May Cry. Dante's brother is this Ken doll. Barbie dumped him and then he met Dante, or something, I don't know. And let's just do a little side-by-side action between the original Virgil and this new person pretending to be Virgil. So, we see that Ninja Theory got some inspiration from Anonymous, likely. You know, is this guy the leader of Anonymous? It is possible when you see, like, all his little people in the promotion art have, like, the little mask or whatever. So, here are your new Sons of Sparta. There you go, folks. Also, some other changes, speaking of Sparta, in the original Devil May Cry franchise, he was an all-powerful demon that, you know, overthrew the king of hell, pretty much, Mundus, and he sealed off the demon world from the human world, and then he lived out the rest of his days with his human wife. And this new game, he's being tortured in some location for some reason. Also, let's take a look at the big bad. You know, in the original Devil May Cry, Mundus was like a giant statue that was being worshipped on the island, more or less. And he wanted to conquer Earth by opening the gates to hell. To get his revenge, too, he wanted to kill Dante for what Sparta did. And now, in the new DmC Devil May Cry, he's an evil CEO who rules the world with demons. Yep. And he might have been inspired by somebody that was on TV at that time. I don't know. Maybe. Possibly. So, Ninja Theory just wants to let you guys know that media and large corporations are evil. And the stories that you make about them are much more compelling than other stories. Because these stories aren't generic or cliche or anything like that. They're really good stories. And let's not forget that Virgil is indeed DLC. So, like, unless you pre-order, not gonna get to play as Virgil. When in the past, you know, they added him in the special edition for Devil May Cry 3, then they let you play as both characters. Because other Devil May Cry games have had you be able to play as multiple characters pretty consistently. And, oh, looky here, even the original fans of Devil May Cry can pay for a classic Dante DLC. And we get 3 different flavors. How cool is that? And you see all this DLC they're selling us? They all have white hair. So we can finally stop being entitled, whiny man-children complaining about white hair. Because clearly he has white hair in all these DLCs. All we have to do is buy them or complete the main game. You know, previously, only the people that worked within the video game industry has had access to the demo, unless you like went to E3 and got to play the demo. So a demo was announced for the PlayStation Store and the Xbox Store for, you know, the general public to actually be able to pick up and play. And you know, this is when the hype train just kind of died. You know, it stopped. And the reason I say this is that the demo was less than perfect. In fact, there were many glitches. Many glitches.
So yeah, found a glitch in the new DmC demo. I broke it. It's broken. Yeah, like, there's supposed to be a race here. So I failed. And what I did was, you know, for shits and giggles, since I was falling to my death anyway, when I was about to fail, I decided to quick circle and attack. Fuck you! You're ruining my video. Anyway, so I did circle, and Dante grabbed his blade and just swung down and never stopped until the screen turned white. And now it doesn't matter what I press. Hold on, let me get my controller here. Look at this. Look at this. Okay, press select to begin. I click select. Timer starts over, but yeah. And I can click start, but I can't pause. Look, I'm clicking start. That's the start button. Click every button on the controller, doesn't matter what you do.
Yeah, the DmC Devil May Cry demo was less than perfect, and there was a lot of glitches. And while the demo was out, there was people claiming that anti-DMC people were going out searching for glitches, and I can tell you that they were not searching for them. They were just there. Capcom presented a very, very poor product. Like when I was debating to play the demo or not, but I decided, what the hell, I'll try it and act like it's not a Devil May Cry game and see where it goes. And the glitch where it you hit the boss and it does no damage, that happened to me. So like, it wasn't just random stuff happening to random individuals that were posting it online searching for glitches. Like, it happened. Some people had hard resets of their PlayStation because of the glitches in the demo. And the demo you can only imagine what's going to happen with the retail release, right? And after playing the demo, and I played on the hardest difficulty as well, it was like a lot easier. And it reminded me of another game I had played a long time ago by the name of Heavenly Sword. Now, if you don't know about Heavenly Sword, I'd recommend it. Sure, it's made by Ninja Theory, and those guys suck, but they actually did a pretty good job with this game. It was a debut PS3 title, so they was actually trying some new stuff out. So it kind of makes sense to stuff that they were trying to do. So pretty much you play as Nariko, and you have this sword that's able to change forms. Now, if you hold L1, it does like a weak attack that's really quick, but it's not very powerful. If you're just not holding any button, like L1 or R1, you just hit the attack button. It does a default attack. It's not super fast, but it does a moderate amount of damage. So it's like balance of the two. And then if you hold R1, you attack slow, but it does a lot of damage. Now let's check out DmC Devil May Cry. If you hold L2, there's a weak attack that doesn't do a lot of damage. And if you're not holding either of those buttons, it's a balanced move that does a moderate amount of damage, and it's not too fast or too slow. And if you hold R2, you do a really slow attack that does a lot of damage. Man. So yeah, Heavenly Sword and DmC Devil May Cry, they have some similarities. And I would say DmC Devil May Cry is like a Heavenly Sword 1.5, really. I mean, the major changes that they made was that, I don't know, you hit square and you shoot guns instead of that being like climbing ladders. That's just my opinion on that. But another thing that really put me off from the demo is that when I played on the higher difficulty, not using the evade button, so I literally just jumped around and tried to do the minimal possible in order to beat the game, and I did. When I played the old games, like, I actually struggle. They had color-coded enemies, and I am not a fan of color-coded enemies, in which case, they had a red enemy that could only be attacked with the red weapon, and they had a blue enemy that could only be attacked with the blue weapon. And this was the nail in the coffin for this game for me. Primarily because Devil May Cry has always been about free-flowing combat. Like, when you play any of the older titles, they don't force you to use a weapon. If you're good with the initial weapon, that's normally like Rebellion, if you get good with that, then you can beat the game with Rebellion. However, if you switch to the other weapons, it might make it easier for you if you're more comfortable with them. But they never force you to use a certain weapon on a certain enemy. They just don't. They let you make it up as you go. You have that freedom. That freedom in combat, huge part of Devil May Cry to me. And when I seen that this game didn't have it, it was a no-sell. It was already a no-sell, granted, because I wasn't going to support Capcom and Ninja Theory's circle jerk of each other. But from a gameplay perspective, as if this were a new game, that would have thrown me off or put me off from playing the game. And speaking of game, let me go ahead and talk about these wacky controls. Boy. So DmC Devil May Cry it doesn't really meet the standard that the previous game set. And when you look at this control scheme, you'll notice that there are 2 evade buttons. Yes, there are 2 evasion buttons. I don't even know why. Like, as soon as I seen the gift for this from people that had played the demo at E3 and stuff, I'm like, why? Why would you put 2 evade buttons and take off lock-on? And now I can tell you why lock-on is important in Devil May Cry. And it's not a small thing. When you do lock-on, one, it lets you lock onto a target that you're trying to attack. So if you're trying to do a combo on a specific enemy, lock-on helps you make sure that you're hitting that enemy. With DmC Devil May Cry, when I was playing it, you have to just kind of get close to the enemy you want to hit and start swinging and hope that you hit the one that you want. In the previous Devil May Cry games, wasn't an issue. You use lock-on. Not only did you do that with lock-on extended your move pool. So let's say you have a standard attack with triangle, right? So if you do forward, if you lock on, hit forward and triangle, you'll do a move that closes the gap between you and the enemy and does damage as well. And if you held lock on, moved away from the enemy and hit triangle, you launch them in the air, so you can do air combos. Now, high time, which is your launcher that you normally use, was mapped from lock on, back and triangle, as it's been since the original game, to just circle. Yes, in order to knock enemies in the air, you just hit circle now. That accessibility dope. And a colossal mistake was not bringing back the style system from Devil May Cry 3 and 4. And this is because the style system gave the player more control about how they want to play Dante, and it allowed for a more personalized experience. Like, for example, normally you only have the inputs for melee attacks being R1 forward triangle, triangle, and R1 back triangle. Like, that's all you have. But if you really like melee attacks, you could equip the Swordmaster style, in which case, circle button becomes an additional melee button. So you could do R1 forward circle, circle, and R1 back circle to have more melee options with all of your melee weapons. And if you didn't like to get in so close and personal and want to keep distance from your enemies, then you could get the gunslinger style, in which case it added more options for your ranged weapons. AKA, like with Ebony and Ivory, this is how you do twosome time, where you shoot in two different directions by hitting circle. So now you can beef up your ranged abilities with Gunslinger. And with all the other guns they have available too, they have their own unique abilities. Now let's say you're okay with just having the standard melee moves and the standard gun moves, but you're kind of not used to evading. You could pick the Trickster style, in which case circle becomes an evasion maneuver. So whenever you feel as though you're going to get hit, you hit circle, you have invincibility frames, you dodge attacks. So it gets harder to be able to hit. It allows you to run up walls, you could teleport with it. So pretty much if you wanted to run away from your enemy, Trickster style was the way to go. And for those of you who like a challenge, there was the Royal Guard style, one that I avoided and played with recently, and it's actually pretty freaking fun. It allows you to block, but not in the way that you're thinking. Like, you're thinking like block with like fighting games where you can just block attacks. You can, but you lose health, but you can't block all attacks, like minor enemy attacks. Like, you could block those, but if it's a boss and you try to block, it's going to knock you back and you're still going to take damage. Royal Guard is about parrying, in which case you time hitting circle with enemy attacks and you build up like a revenge meter. And then with R1 forward and circle, you'll release all that energy that you blocked with the Royal Guard style. And it does a crap ton of damage. Massive amount of damage. Like, I tried using it against Virgil in Devil May Cry 3 on the last battle. Like, I only did Royal Guard, and it was very fun, entertaining, and it did a lot of damage when I would counter his moves. And this is where the frames per second really comes into play here. Because if you're trying to get accurate timing on parries, you have to have the character respawn as soon as you hit circle in order to get those perfect parries. In which case, 60 frames per second will be very much important to get the timing down. And if it's 30 frames per second, it's going to throw your timing off, and therefore using Royal Guard would be a problem, which is probably why they didn't even add it to begin with. If that style system explanation I gave you sounded interesting, well, rest assured that Capcom knew it was an important feature, which is why they took it out of DmC Devil May Cry, in order to allow players to hold a button for weak attacks and another button for strong attacks. Also, take off that pesky lock-on button, so you don't have to worry about locking on to enemies. And the Devil May Cry mythos, that had a lot of unanswered questions and a lot of things to explore, kind of like what happened with Sparta, Virgil, and all of that good stuff, well, it's gone because Capcom decided to risk it all. Now, what you might be asking yourself is that, why is Capcom deciding to risk it all? Devil May Cry must be at risk, somehow, right? Like, it must have low sales, people must not know or like Dante, but you'd be wrong. Devil May Cry 4 is the best-selling Devil May Cry game, and it was only released for the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360, and it sold the most. And then as far as Dante's character, he's a PlayStation 2 icon. He showed up in Beautiful Joe as a secret character if you beat the game, which just made me go buy the game so I could play as Dante because he's that enjoyable. He showed up in another game where they had a collaboration to where if Dante showed up in this game to increase the popularity, that they would do the devil designs, and that's why Devil May Cry 3's devil designs look the way they do. That big crossover game, you know, Project X Zone, where they take Capcom characters and cross him over with Bandai characters and I think Sega characters. Dante's front and center in this game too. Pretty recognizable. And also in Monster Hunter, although it's owned by Capcom, Devil May Cry has made numerous cameos. Such as, here's Dante fighting Tetsura. You can get DLC costumes for it in Frontier, for Devil May Cry and Street Fighter. And with Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate, you could dress your cat feline companion to look like Dante from Devil May Cry. And also, although this is kind of a preview and coming attractions, when they did come out with Devil May Cry 4 Special Edition, they came out with a Virgil which appears to use dual swords for Monster Hunter Explorer. And need I even bring up Marvel vs. Capcom? Dante was a fan favorite as soon as he was released in the trailers. And with Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite, guess who's coming back? Yes, indeed, Dante. And you would think that if Capcom's doing this drastic change, that clearly the Devil May Cry story is stale and they legitimately can't go anywhere else with it. But once again, that's not really the case here. And this image from Bayonetta proves that there's some other areas that Devil May Cry can explore. Now, if you take a look at this image, you might notice some things. And here, I've marked them so you can see them. You see a red coat, you see some twin pistols, and a sword. So, what if, mind you, let's just say, what if there was a crossover between Devil May Cry and Bayonetta? Think about how awesome that would be. And I would especially love this idea because Bayonetta is the spiritual successor to Devil May Cry. It was on the PlayStation 3 originally, and then it came out for the Wii U with Bayonetta 2. Nintendo picked it up and saved the franchise, and to my knowledge, I think they're working on a Bayonetta 3 right now. And it's known for its over-the-top action and great in-depth fighting combat, and I watched someone play it, and it was really entertaining to watch. And not only that, Bayonetta makes Anita Sarkeesian so salty that it's just, I will go buy this game again and again because she doesn't like Bayonetta as a character. Because, well, you know, it doesn't work with her whole, I don't know, deal that female characters can't be empowered yet be attractive. So, obviously, she no like the Bayonetta. But this is why I'm bringing up Bayonetta so much. In the item description for the Bracelet of Time, it reads, Ava, a truly extraordinary witch, entered into a combat with the legendary Dark Knight and then faced the amassed armies of Inferno. These bracelets were made by her hand, and those wearing them are said to become true masters of witch time at their very will. So, you know, Dante's mother, I could believe that she was a witch, because that seems like it's an unexplored area within Devil May Cry's mythos for humans, and how they potentially get empowered, because, you know, some of them fall in love with demons. Demons are available in their world, so I can see there being witches in Devil May Cry's world. And when you look at Bayonetta, that could be a take for what could happen. And like I said, Dante's mom being a witch who is still human and falls in love with a demon, way more believable than Dante's mom being an angel that falls in love with a demon. And when you look at the worlds for both Bayonetta and Devil May Cry, they have some very big similarities here. Now, let me ask you this. Which city is from the Devil May Cry franchise and which one is from the Bayonetta franchise? And both games also have supernatural beings, such as, if I asked you which enemies are from Devil May Cry and which one are from Bayonetta, would you be able to tell the difference? Well, no, because they're similar, and they would cross over pretty well. They'd mesh really nice, like they'd have some synergy there. And let's just be honest, a Bayonetta and Devil May crossover would be huge, especially since you have two over-the-top characters known for being witty, and I think the character interactions and banter between these two will be a joy to watch. Now, me just hoping for a really cool crossover aside, let's go ahead and talk about Devil May Cry's biggest issue. The biggest issue with Devil May Cry is the order that the games released, with the first game in 2001, Devil May Cry 2 in 2003, Devil May Cry 3 in 2005, and Devil May Cry 4 in 2008. However, canonly, you have Devil May Cry 3 first, then the original Devil May Cry happens, then Devil May Cry 4 happens, and then Devil May Cry 2 happens. And you know, the biggest issue to move the Devil May Cry franchise forward is what do you do with Devil May Cry 2, which is currently at the end canonly. Devil May Cry 2, for the longest, and even still now, is seen as the least favorite in the Devil May Cry franchise. And this is partially to do because Dante's much more stoic and he doesn't have any wisecracks in this game, along with the really big areas that look kind of bland. Those are the main criticisms there. Not to mention the game's difficulty as well, as if you just upgrade Ebony and Ivory, you can pretty much just shoot through the whole game, literally, with those, and you'll kill everything. Now, the question is, how do you tie Devil May Cry 2 to everything else? And honestly, that's a pretty simple fix. Just explore the concept of Devil Trigger. And this is something that Devil May Cry 2 did better than the other games. You were able to customize your Devil Trigger with amulet pieces. So you can make your Devil form fly. You can have them, I think, shoot lightning. And Dante also has his really cool form called the Majin form that I didn't even know about until like DmC Devil May Cry happened and a person showed like the Majin form. And I was like, wow, that's really freaking cool. Now, we know that Devil May Cry 2 will be a perfect place to explore this concept because Dante is not cracking jokes and he's not as lighthearted as he used to be. And you could explore what caused him to have this change. Now, as I was hinting at earlier, Devil Trigger is a concept that's been in Devil May Cry since the original game. And, you know, the form changes for what appears to be arbitrary reasons from game to game. Here are the forms from the first game. If you have Alistair or Infinite equipped, you get two different forms. And of course, at the end, when you get the Force Edge upgraded, you get Sparta's original form. With Devil May Cry 2, you get your Devil form that you customize. And to the right, there's the Majin form, where you have special conditions to meet before you can transform into it. And Devil May Cry 3, depending on which weapon you have, you get a different Devil design. Same for Virgil as well. And in Devil May Cry 4, you have your Devil design along with the Onslaught or Dreadnought design for it was the Royal Guard ability. So if you're looking to reboot the series and get more interest in it, why not explore this game mechanic a little bit more in depth and tie it into the story? That way old fans will want to learn more about the Devil Trigger, and with some of the hype around the game, new fans might want to pick it up. Of course, this will not be complete unless I give you guys like a taste of what Capcom could have done with this concept. So let's say with scenario 1 that Dante is losing control of his Devil Trigger, and this is because he's been slaying demons for years and using devil arms that he becomes scared of losing himself and becoming a mindless demon because Dante is a half-breed. So maybe he can't control his power all the way, which is why he doesn't want to rely on his devil form too much. So let's say that he has a flashback pre-Devil May Cry 2 where he causes a catastrophe when he tries to go Devil Trigger and he loses control and people end up dying because of it. And like I said, half-breeds cannot have as much control as a Devil Trigger as full demons, which would explain why frequent use of the Devil Trigger would erode the human part of his soul, eventually leading to his full-on corruption, a la C. Virgil, or aka C. Virgil in the games, and what's happened to him. And this will explain why in pretty much all of the cutscenes you see of Dante, he's not using his Devil Triggers. And this could be the explanation why. And this will allow them to explore more into what Devil Arms are exactly. We know that when you defeat a boss, they either become Devil Arms willingly, like Cerberus did in Devil May Cry 3, or unwillingly, like Beowulf did when Virgil defeated him. And we know that Dante has a crap ton of devil arms, because he's defeated a lot of demons. Now, the question to ask yourself is that, how do devil arms affect humans? When you look at Devil May Cry 4 and Yamato, Nero seems possessed by the sword. So what if devil arms can possess humans? Or the spirits of the demons within the devil arms can possess humans? Which will lead us to scenario 2. What if Dante's devil arms are stolen? Someone comes in, steals Dante's devil arms, and starts to sell them off to the highest bidder, right? And this could tie into Arius from Devil May Cry 2. He could just be one of the many buyers from Dante's devil arms. This would create a real dilemma for Dante, who has sworn not to kill humans. And if they're using his devil arms and they're possessed by demons, they are still in fact human, and they would be formidable opponents for the Demon Slayer. But he wouldn't be able to use lethal force like he would against demons. So essentially he'd be handicapping himself, and he'd have to find a solution in order to solve this problem that's threatening the world. And what would the solution be? Well, you remember, if you don't know, at the end of Devil May Cry 2, Dante rides into hell. And this could be Dante's plan to go into hell to kill the spirits of the demons so that he can free the humans from the devil arms, so that he doesn't have to kill them, but he can just stop them from being as formidable with the devil arms. And, you know, I really think this is a great concept to explore, because it can connect the previous Devil May Cry games and the anime together with just soft retcons. And you could just do this with playable flashbacks in this new title. And this will make it accessible for new players so they can get an idea of what happened in the previous games without it being so convoluted. And for new players, we can finally move the franchise forward. And of course, you can always do this with that Bayonetta and Devil May Cry crossover. Because what if Dante loses control of himself and Bayonetta is there to stop him and she makes a cameo? That would be great. Like, if she's the boss fight in the game, I'd definitely pick it up. And I'm pretty sure that garnered some hype around this new Devil May Cry. And it would also make Dante a little bit more human and less Gary Sue. So Dante would have some obvious weaknesses and some limitations to what he can do. And I mean, seriously, crossover Dante, Bayonetta. I know I keep bringing this up because I seen the death battle and it was like my favorite one. Really fun battle. I recommend you guys check it out. And you know, if they made a legit game about it, you know, candidly, I think that will do well. But whatever, that's just me. That's just me. So, despite all that potential I just displayed to you for the Devil May Cry franchise, you gotta ask yourself, why is Capcom still deciding to risk it all for this? The new Dante, the new DmC Devil May Cry being half angel, half human, 30 frames per second, no lock-on button, etc., etc. While insulting the fan base every step of the way when they're trying to voice their concerns about them not liking the way that the franchise is going. And for what? So video games can go Hollywood? As shown in an interview earlier. And I mean, come on, let's be honest. They westernized Dante so they could attempt to make Devil May Cry movies like they done with the Resident Evil movies, where they pretty much ran it into the ground. Like, the fans do not like the Resident Evil movies because it does not do the source material justice. And I seen that firsthand when I actually looked up the Mansion incident, thanks to some YouTubers that put compilation clips together. And I'm like, dude, this is a really good story. It'll make a nice movie. But then I see the Resident Evil movies, I'm like, oh, nope. So we get back to our original question here. What is a reboot? And here's Wikipedia's definition for it. And you see how the reboot worked for Spider-Man. How despite them being different movies from different years, the character still stays the same. And this is something that I cannot say for the Devil May Cry franchise. And you know, other companies have done it right. They rebooted Tomb Raider. And I would say that those games are successful. They look really fun, and I've heard nothing but good things about them. However, when I looked at the Devil May Cry reboot and comparison, I can't really say the same. You know, some people like the reboot. However, a lot of the old fans just feel alienated in the franchise that they used to hold dear. And here's your reboot, folks. This is it. This is what Capcom has been offering. This is what they said you'd feel sheepish about once more information is out. And most of the information is out at this point in 2012. And after all the information for doing this video, I argue that the DmC Devil May Cry isn't a reboot at all, but instead film adaptation of Devil May Cry. And we know that films based on video games are hit and miss by gamers and moviegoers. And I mean, you can see this with the various games that tried to make it into Hollywood, or rather Hollywood being bankrupt of ideas and trying to use video games for inspiration for movies to try to make money. And some of these movies might have been acceptable, some of these movies might be good. I can attest to you that some of these movies were bad. Prince of Persia was awful. I made jokes in most of the movie to make it bearable, but I would not see that again. Did not go see Need for Speed. No way, no how. The Tekken movie was better than I thought, but it doesn't do the franchise justice like the game does, to be honest. And that Street Fighter movie, and the Street Fighter movies they made live action are just god awful. God awful. So bad. Horrible. And I think DmC Devil May Cry deserves to be in the same ranks, because it's like a film adaptation of a franchise that wouldn't translate over to movies well. So they just changed it, made it more Western, so that it could, make movies, because that was their plan. Not to mention that they just added all the angst and anger to make Devil May Cry as edgy as possible, when the series never needed that before. So, Capcom, Ninja Theory, the gaming journalists have been throwing shade at the old Devil May Cry fans and strawmanning them to say that it's only about the hair, when after watching this video it should become pretty clear that it wasn't just the hair that pissed off the old fans. It's a lot of stuff, tons. And it did not help that people who weren't even fans of Devil May Cry were telling old fans of Devil May Cry to stop hating because of the hair. And they had never even played the games before, and they believed what the video game journalists were saying because, well, they're supposed to have the interests of gamers in mind while writing, but obviously they don't. And when you get to 2 years later with Gamergate, you kind of see the disconnect between video game journalists and gamers. Meanwhile, the characters for Devil May Cry have been changed on a fundamental level, aesthetically and as characters, to the point of being unrecognizable by fans in the franchise. The story has changed on a very fundamental level, to the point to where it's unrecognizable by previous fans. And even the gameplay has changed on a fundamental level, to the point of being unrecognizable by people that have played Devil May Cry games before. And this is not even forgetting Capcom's arrogance towards the fan, and being surprised when they did not like what they were being offered with this westernized version of DmC Devil May Cry that was intended to make movies and not be a really cool game. Not to mention Ninja Theory's arrogance towards fans who wanted to have answers for why their franchise was changing so drastically in such a little time, when it was still selling pretty damn well and it still had a lot of potential that was cut short. And contrary to popular belief, fans did not just hate this game because of the hair. But I think this game was the embodiment of Capcom and Ninja Theory's blatant disrespect and disregard of their fans and consumers to push a product that the fans didn't want down their throats, and made the video game journalists and the gaming outlets paint a picture that the fans were to blame for all of this, when it was Capcom being Capcom. And the original fans of Devil May Cry told both Capcom and Ninja Theory what they could do with the reboot that they were trying to shove down people's throats. Just keep it, because I'm not buying it. And that wraps up 2012. And here's a short little timeline about the events that happened, and as well as pretty much the camps at the end of 2012. Now, the game will be released early 2013, so there will be one more video for this. And I welcome you guys to join me in the next part, where you can see the haters get put in their place